the military aspect, there were still cultural aspects, but then Godzilla started to move into beating up other giant monsters which were in costume. And the idea is that even these monsters, which are ridiculous, like you have a three-headed dragon, three-headed golden dragon, you have a monster that's made entirely of slime and pollution, you have all sorts of other weird things, which if I went to, we would be here for like 4 hours. So these aspects also represent, because some of these monsters can be divided into like 3 basic categories. One is an ancient animal like Godzilla, which has been revived because of nuclear fallout or environmental degradation or ice caps melting or something like that. The second is aliens, which are again been attracted to Earth or to this kind of post-nuclear fallout which is generated by man, and again is another extension of that challenge to our perception and our attempts to maybe rebuild or maybe to move in that direction. And the third monster type is something that is again a direct consequence from Godzilla, which is monsters which are directly related to Godzilla in the sense that things which are derived from him or parts of him or things like that. Usually these are man-made, or usually these are also alien or biological in nature. But every single monster that has come out of Godzilla's entire existence has also been an extension, a representation of that fear and that concern that Godzilla is not the only one. It doesn't begin and it doesn't end with him. It extends beyond that as well. So as these movies went on and on, there is, as I mentioned, there is a fun aspect to it. There is a childlike interest and inheritance. I know that some people tend to look at it in a certain way with like, oh, this is a guy in a suit, so why should I care about this? But as you move on, there's 2 major examples I will cite. One is one of the most hated Godzilla movies that was ever made. It's called All Monsters Attack in 1969. This movie is basically about a child, this Cliff Notes version, this is basically about a child who imagines his friendship with Godzilla's son and this entire thing on Monster Island. So the idea is it's more of a childhood story, and he is living through these experiences which may or may not be real, because quite frankly, it's a little nebulous in the film whether Godzilla is real in this incarnation or not, because it would be a little weird that if you had action figures of Godzilla in a world where Godzilla is real, that is kind of, that's a little concerning. But
Siddharth, I'm so sorry, we've just got 1 more minute.
Yeah, so 1 more minute. Yeah, sure. So things like this, All Monsters Attack is one example where it focuses on the idea of the lost children of Japan, the Hochigo, who are children who have been left behind by their parents, in the sense while they are working in this post-nuclear, post-industrial revolution type thing where the focus is more on that. So these children end up living in their own fantasies and are not victims per se, but is the consequence of a post-industrial and a post-nuclear Japan-based world. Another major movie that was part of this whole shifting culture of Godzilla and how it reflects in Anthropocene is Godzilla versus Hedorah. Hedorah is a smog monster. He is a creature made entirely of pollution, and this is something the main aim of this film was to address the fact that Hedorah is a representation of the industrial fallout, because this was representation of Japan dealing with multiple diseases and industrial smog based, like the Minamata disease and various other things. And it also focused on how environmental activism, in the context of the movie itself, that environmental activism by the younger generation was also viewed in somewhat skeptical, because people were like, what are these kids going to do? What are they going to party about? What are they going to do? So this shift in Godzilla has constantly been happening, where the core essence, in the sense that he has been a figure that has represented both from destructive elements and moved to more environmental degradation, and then moved towards this environmental end state as a creature that is a balancing force, that is a mediator, in the sense that while he is created by nuclear fallout and devastation, he is also a mediating force in that regard. So I'll just wrap up with this regard. Godzilla is a destructive force, obviously. He is represented as a force of ecological preservation and restoration as well, but that's only a small fraction of what he represents in our psyches, and especially in the psyches of an entire nation. Whenever I see a Godzilla poster in Bengali or in Hindi or in English, and there's kids usually around, could I have just 1 minute, flocking around it, and I see that is important. I understand the zeitgeist of that entire thing, because it transpires more across language barriers. You don't need to have understand Japanese to understand what Godzilla represents in that sense. And while Godzilla is the king of the monsters, he is the son of the atomic bomb, he is a beast of the apocalypse and all of this, it's also important to recall that a giant fire-breathing atomic lizard is one of the closest things you will ever get to understanding what it means to be human in a world of monsters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. I think we are going to take questions of all the 4 papers once they've done presenting. So we'll take the questions together. Okay, so I would want to invite Avani Ailin Purti and Baiju Gopal, who are coming here from Christ team to be University Bengaluru.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Avni, and my guide is Dr. Baiju. And today the paper I'm presenting is Beyond the Anthropocene, Understanding Ecological Changes Through Adivasi Imagination. As an Adivasi woman, it's also an honor to sort of look at literature that has also been produced by another Adivasi writer. And I think it's very important to understand the positionality of the researchers who are doing a lot of this research about tribal and indigenous people, because a lot of them still happen to be dominant caste people. Can I have the next slide? Next. Yeah. So let's start with who Adivasis are, because there's a lot of confusion about who are Adivasis, who are tribals, who are scheduled tribes, who are DNTs, etc. So Adivasi is a form of political identity and identification. It's the entire process of becoming an Adivasi through exclusion, exploitation, and marginalization. And for the sake of this presentation, as well as in the contemporary research strata of Adivasi studies, it's a political identity that has been self-mobilized and identified with. Next slide. And now that we have a fair idea of what Anthropocene means, the problem with the conceptualization of the framework is that it believes everybody or all of the human beings have the same impact on whatever is happening with the ecology. It does not look at the caste positions and the caste locations and the power that is associated with all of these things in terms of how this ecology is impacted, exploited, and used up. Thus, marginalization of Adivasi people is no longer just a sociological phenomenon, but it also becomes an ecological process. It's a systemic issue, and the very means of the survival of Adivasi people is more often than not dependent on how they're able to access their ecologies. But when the problem or the issue of caste comes in, it affects the ways in which they are able to access it. They do not have the credit-worthiness or the trustworthiness that other dominant caste people have. They continue to be outcasts. They continue to be people that are always outside looking in, even within their own lands. Next. Yeah. So now coming to the book that I've picked, it's by another Santali author, Hansraj Sowendra Shekhar, and it's called The Adivasi Will Not Dance. It's a short collection of 10 stories, and when it came out, it was actually banned by the Jharkhand government because they believed that it showed the Santali women in a very obscene light, that it objectified and sexualized them, even though a lot of people made the argument that they are already exploited sexually, economically, financially, socially. So this is a very apt description of what happens within the community. This is an author who is an insider translating the experiences of the Santali people for the outside world. He is not fetishizing primitiveness. He's not glorifying displacement. He's not romanticizing any of these experiences that a lot of other literature continues to do so. Here the characters are not just themselves, but also echoing all of the stereotypes that have been formed about them for centuries and also have been internalized to a certain extent. For example, such a fool I am, a foolish Santali, a foolish Adivasi. We Santals do not know how to protect our riches, we only know how to escape. Look Javai, don't forget, we Adivasis are very bad at stealing. So these are all of the stereotypes that the Adivasi people have been forced to fit into, and all of the media representations that are formed about them. Next slide. Yeah. So because I also opened with the idea that the Jharkhand government thought the women were sexualized and specifically objectified in these stories, in the media that has already been reproduced, be it films, be it other pieces of literature, Adivasi women are always sexual beings that are meant for the pleasure and should be at the disposal of all the dikus or the outsiders of the community. And even though Adivasi community sort of projects itself as a very egalitarian society, there is still a lot of inequality and inequity within the community. There is patriarchy, and then there are patrilineal means of resource being passed on. The men are the ones who own land. The land will be transferred from the father to the man. The woman's identity will never really be tied to any material resource. So she will essentially not have any identity of her own in some way. There also still continue to be incidents of witch hunting, wherein a single woman who is not affiliated to a man, be it a father or a brother or a husband, is deemed Dahini, or somebody who has certain magical powers, simply because she might have some sort of influence or some sort of skill. Here the author in the book also writes about how there was the rumor of sorcery spread by a disgruntled relative of theirs. Her mother's death, her brother's disability. So all of these misfortunes are because of this woman who is not married, who is not affiliated to anybody. Next slide. Yes. So now when we look at the idea of magic itself, there is still another layer of social location, financial location, and who these women are. So there is a chapter about Basoji. She is an old widow, and she was casted out of the land or the home by her sons because one of her grandchildren happened to pass away when she was there. Then there is another story about Sona, who is a sex worker. And her magic is that her customers want to come back to her. So now it's not that she has a certain skill set because of which people are coming back, but it is rather some sort of influence or magic that she has. Now, Sona's magic is something that can be exploited by the men, but Basoji's magic, the widow's magic, is something that is feared, and yet she is still casted out or still socially excluded. Then the disproportionate or inequitable impact of changing ecologies or Anthropocene is on women. So here the author writes about how Lakhipur becomes a coal mine. The villages fall, there is quote-unquote development for the people, but also along with it comes up the biggest or the busiest red light area. So the question now arises that the development is at the cost of whom? The exploitation of whom, and economic growth for who? Next slide. Yes. And now land can be thought of often as something that is very value neutral, but depending on the people who perceive it, it can have a lot of different meanings and a lot of different values. For somebody who is an outsider within this region, it is something that is a geographical space, something that can be commercialized, something that can be sold, owned, etc. However, for the Adivasi people, it is not just a territory, but the way they identify themselves. It is also something that provides them a sense of belongingness. This is their entire life, their entire community's life that is associated with a piece of land. The slogan of Jal Jungle Zameen is something that has been used by Adivasis to ask and sort of revolt for their rights to the forests. But here, what needs to be also noted is how the authors looks at the transmutation of the value of land. It is something that was a property and then not a property, and something that keeps on changing. Next slide. A lot of these developmental projects demand displacement of the Adivasi people. Even though they form around 8.6% of the population, 40% of them continue to be displaced people. The land is always steeped in caste relations. It is about who knows whom and who owns more power, who owns more money and resources. In the first line, no wait, I am a farmer, or was a farmer. Was a farmer is right because I don't farm anymore. Why? Because this person or this character does not own any land anymore. In the other excerpt, they write about how coal merchants, all the dikus, have not only taken away coal, but also all of these semi-precious stones that make them rich. But the Adivasis are the ones who still continue to be poor. Next slide. Yes. And then there is also the idea of how this leads to a lot of resource disparity. All of these dikus and dominant caste people have access to the best doctors and the best hospitals in town. But the Adivasis still continue to be the one who wear tatters and have barely enough food. Soja also talks about this idea of socio-spatial dialect, wherein it's not just the social exclusion that happens in isolation from spatial exclusion. Both of these things happen together, both of these processes happen together. So when you socially exclude certain communities like Adivasis, Dalits or Bahujans, you are also sort of, when you spatially exclude them, you also socially exclude them because you're binding them to a certain location or a certain area. This is an excerpt about a Santali man who is in a public sector job, and he has gone to ask for a rent for home in Vadodara. So the person who is renting it out says, tribals, even low caste Hindus, they are seen as impure. Right? Never say that you are from Jharkhand, just say that you have been transferred from Bhubaneswar. So the performance of identity and how much an Adivasi person has to conform, even when it comes to a change in their social mobility or social location. Yeah, social location is something that can be noted here. Next. Another aspect of Anthropocene, especially for communities that have a lot of cultural practices and a lot of cultural traditions of their own, is about how, in terms or in times of survival, certain things that are sacred to them, for example, their music, their dance, their songs, everything, because of hunger and poverty, needs to be commercialized or capitalized. So it's about how the Anthropocene is not just changing the people, but also the way in which they are able to identify themselves, and the ways in which they are able to imagine their resources. Next. So to conclude, I would like to talk about how the author sort of presents Adivasi bodies or Adivasi people as liminal beings. They are always an outcast or an outsider even to their own land. They are always in the cracks or crevices because you're always unsure about who these Adivasis are. Are they the laborers? Are they the tea tribes? Or are they the people who come in through reservations to your institutions? The stories place Adivasis as liminal beings within urban and rural spaces whose identity and existence is always in flux. Can I have the next slide? Yeah. So it talks about how the same farmer is now a servant in somebody else's factory. There is always the idea that, oh, I want to go cook out with other Santals, but there are certain demands of the society that I need to conform to. Even when Adivasi people are sort of converting to a certain religion for maybe education, etc., they are renamed David and Michael and Christopher and whatnot. So it is the entire idea of Adivasi people always being in flux and in transition, and that is something that I would like to stop with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Avani Eileen Purti. We move on now to Dipanvita Nath. Dipanvita, you can make your presentation. She's an independent research scholar.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. The working title of my paper is Frightening Flooded Frames, Urban Anthropocene as Seen in Wade. My talk today is about a 10-minute animation. It's called Wade, and it is set in a future version of the city of Kolkata, which has been made uninhabitable by climate change. And the filmmakers are Kalp Sanghvi, the directors of this film are Kalp Sanghvi and Upamanyu Bhattacharya. And they imagine survival in a post-disaster landscape. And this particular film, it does this by showing how climate stress, it builds slowly and then suddenly feels like a disaster. Many disasters invite spectacle. The dam bursts, the bridge collapses, the cyclone makes landfall. And our eyes are more or less trained for that one loud moment. Climate breakdown rarely works that way. It behaves like a snowball accumulating over time. Heat absorbed by the ocean and the centimeters of the sea level added each year. And wetlands leveled, the drains clogged. Now, Rob Nixon calls this slow violence, damage that gathers gradually. It's hard to film and it's easy to ignore until it crosses that threshold and it looks like a gigantic spectacle. With mountainous damage caused. Wade opens by turning a city wall into warning, beat the sea level, with the Howrah Bridge behind it at the backdrop. Soon another message slides past. What is it? Vote against climate change lies. Now, this film, it doesn't preach. It simply places these words inside floodwater. The land harder, they land harder. For instance, we remember that one speech where our very own Prime Minister, he had once told the school children that climate has not changed. We have changed. Our habits have changed. Now, this infamous remark, it was widely reported and criticized. because it framed the issue as a personal habit rather than a warning system. Now, from where the film stays, it stays very close to the bodies. We hear sloshing, rough breath, cloth dragging on skin, and the camera keeps our sightliness short. It's all confined to the doorways, shutters, floating debris. And we move slowly because the city is now submerged in water. There are piles of plastic heaped at corners and on railings, and the windows hum with air conditioners, a reminder that everyday cooling, especially when powered by fossil-heavy grids, they add waste heat and locks in demand. Now, this is where climate justice and environmental justice meet community justice. The question is not abstract fairness in the world, but where real neighborhoods get protection, participation, and repair. In many cities, the affluent move upslope or into better serviced enclaves, and the center quietly recedes to the higher fortified ground, and yesterday's margins becomes today's frontline. With every monsoon and project approval, margins and centers shift, and Wade makes that visible without a single line of dialogue. We see Park Street facades and signs. For example, we see flurries all abandoned. The polished buildings, they remain like abandoned shells, residues of capitals that once signaled stability. And over here, in the film's Weather, we see one unspeaking figure. It keeps on returning, a man in a mask. And it's less identity than equipment. And for a city that has become hard to breathe. Around him, garbage heaps and drifting bags are never just mess. They are hydraulic actors because they block the drains, they redirect currents, snug at feet, and multiply at risk. Now, climate stress also changes how people act. And Wade shows humanity moving backwards, well, not morally, but practically, towards basic survival rhythms. We see wading, we see lifting, sharing, eating, resting, that's it. And there is no time to mourn as well. Grief is folded into motion. In one of the film's pairings, a human baby is drowned, while elsewhere a tiger cub is born. We see that life does not stop, it just gets redistributed. And in another close shot, we see that the tiger paws for a moment. They look like human palms, and that is that in a way can be read as mutation. It's a deliberate hint that our fates are now braided. Now, if the politics in the background feel sharp, like vote against climate change lies, it is because the denial, it turns slow violence into sudden catastrophe. We cannot afford that in a delta city. Now, in 2024, the statistics say that sea level rose faster than expected, averaging about 5.9 millimeter per year, which is an anomalously high year driven largely by ocean warming and expansion, pushing global mean sea level to a new record. Now, those numbers are just not trivia, they are actually inputs. That heights our drains need to stop clear, and now there are pumps, they need servicing, and that we need new mapping. What I personally value the most in this particular short film is its restraint. It doesn't really hand us any speeches. It gives us frames to notice these points and sounds to register effort, and thresholds to map future water lines. And it shows how community justice sits at the junction of climate and environmental justice. And if we take that seriously, even the most painful images which are shown in the film, they acquire direction. For example, the drowned child is not an emblem of despair. It's a demand for the proximate buffers and the predictable exits that must be there. And if Wade also shows that before that with this particular film, it shows the before of any disaster. It's the friction that accumulates, so that our policy, it must become maintenance rather than a spectacle. Now, if there's one remedial step that we can take back home, it's that the cities need such maintenance so that when the water comes, neither the human nor the animal is pushed into dangerous proximity. And no family has to choose between mourning and survival. Now, that is a far more realistic, measurable, and fair kind of justice that this particular century demands. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deepanita, for your presentation. We move on to the last speaker of this particular panel. It's Trisha Das, who is a research scholar at this university. Trisha.
Thank you so much, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. And the title of my paper is Gravitational Ecologies, Space, Cinema, and the Affective Mapping of the Anthropocene. I'll be talking about space movies, specifically two particular movies. One is Gravity, another one is Life. And as you can see that this PPT was made with the help of AI, and our Dean sir has mentioned in the first day that, Dean sir has mentioned on the first day that AI is one of the budding elements of study of Anthropocene, so I guess I kind of abide by what he said. So, we live in a time when ecological crisis has altered not only our relationship with nature, but also the way we see and sense the world. Cinema translates these abstract planetary changes into visual and emotional experience, giving form to what is otherwise slow, invisible, or dispersed. Chayan? Most representation of the Anthropocene unfold in ruined cities, eroded coasts, and collapsing ecosystems. Space cinema, often viewed as spectacle or escapism, has become a way to think about Earth from the outside. Outer space, stripped of atmosphere and sound, mirrors the fragility of the world we inhabit. It offers not distance, but reflection. So as I said, that I intend to explore how Gravity, released in 2013, and Life, 2017, use the setting of outer space to think through ecological entanglement. They do not imagine space as escape, they turn it into a mirror that reflects the condition of the Anthropocene. The title of this paper, quote unquote, if I can say, Gravitational Ecologies, refer to this shared structure of dependence. It is a force of connection that is also a force of risk. These films imagine ecology in similar terms. They reveal how interdependence sustains life while making it precarious. Gravity becomes a metaphor for the weight of existence in a damaged world. Now, the movie Gravity, it stages ecological fear by moving the scene of crisis of the planet and placing it in orbit. The film uses the emptiness of space to make terrestrial fragility visible. Debris become a rotating archive of human intervention. At first glance, Gravity seems like a survival thriller set in outer space. Yet the film's deeper tension lies in what Timothy Morton would call the collapse of human-centered thinking. Dr. Ryan Stone, played by Sandra Bullock, isolated in orbit after a catastrophic debris collision, faces not an quote-unquote enemy, but the overwhelming indifference of space, a force that refuses to be moralized as friend or foe. Alfonso Cuarón frames technology as a double bind. Rockets, satellites, and life support are instruments of ambition. They also make bodies dependent and exposed. The space station reads as a fragile prosthesis. Its modules and tethers hold life in a provisional balance. When those holds fail, the result is not a mechanical breakdown, it is an exposure of human finitude. The aesthetic of the film collapses conventional scales of perception. Long, uninterrupted shots mimic orbital motion and erase stable points of reference. The camera's movement forces a shared disorientation. Viewers experience the same loss of scale that the protagonist suffers. The perspective that once suggested mastery now reveals entanglement. The planet is not a backdrop, it is an agent in relation to human systems. The film's visual logic unsettles the distinction between technological progress and environmental collapse. The orbiting debris, composed of remnants of human innovation, embodies a cycle where creation and destruction are inseparable, capturing the essence of Morton's dark ecology, which talks about an ecological awareness that refuses separation between beauty and contamination, or life and decay. In Gravity, the spectacle of orbiting fragments transforms the aesthetics of space from transcendence to implication. Its sublime imagery no longer reassures but exposes how every act of technological mastery reinforces the fragility it seeks to overcome. Through the dynamic, Gravity reveals the Anthropocene not as a crisis that can be escaped, but as a condition that must be inhabited with critical awareness of entanglement and consequence. The film's conclusion reorients the gaze from detachment to attachment. The final sequence, as the protagonist falls back through the atmosphere and lands on the muddy shore, marks a shift from suspension to groundedness. The return to Earth is not presented as victory or redemption, but as an acknowledgement of dependence. The film rejects the fantasy of transcendence that has long accompanied space exploration and instead insists on the necessity of remaining bound to the planet, resonating with the politics of earthly attachment, as Bruno Latour points out, where survival depends on recognizing that human existence is inseparable from material and ecological processes. The moment of landing, with its focus on weight, gravity, and breadth, redefines what it means to be human in the Anthropocene. It locates strength not in control but in relation, in the capacity to endure vulnerability and remain connected to the very ground that sustains life. If Gravity visualizes the Anthropocene through collapse and return, life explores it through contagion and excess. Set aboard the International Space Station, the film begins as an act of scientific curiosity and unfolds into a meditation on the uncontrollability of life itself. The alien organism recovered from Mars functions less as a traditional monster than as a figure of ecological recursion. It grows in response to every attempt to contain it, feeding on the very systems designed for control. This inversion reflects the anxiety that defines the Anthropocene, the fear that the tools of mastery, like scientific discovery, technological containment, rational design, have become the agents of exposure. The organism embodies a form of life that exceeds human comprehension or governance. Yeah, I'll finish up. Its biology defies boundaries, absorbing energy and knowledge from every counter. In this sense, life transforms the laboratory into a closed ecological system where every act of observation alters the conditions of survival. The station's corridors, sealed and airless, amplify the claustrophobia of a world that has lost the distinction between inside and outside. The more the crew struggles to preserve the integrity of the habitat, the more it mirrors the human condition on a damaged planet, which is trapped within a systems that can neither be abandoned nor fully controlled. Where Gravity frames survival as a return to Earth, life suggests that even the concept of return may be compromised. The organism persistent makes extinction and endurance indistinguishable. This uncertainty captures the ontological instability of the Anthropocene, in which life itself becomes a hyperobject, vast, diffuse, and indifferent to human intention. The horror of the film arises not from alien invasion, but from recognition that the boundaries of the life are porous and that human existence operates within a continuum of biological interdependence. By converting scientific ambition into an existential crisis, life exposes the fragility of the human-centered worldview. Its ending, where the surviving pod carrying the organism lands on Earth, collapses the spatial distinction that once separated the cosmic from the terrestrial. The circle closes, returning the external threat to its origin. In this gesture, the film extends the logic of Anthropocene imagination. There is no outside, only the recursive loop of consequence. Together, both the movies articulate two interconnected modes of Anthropocene imagination. Both films relocate ecological anxiety, transforming it into an area where questions of vulnerability, containment, and survival can be visually and effectively staged. Space in these films is never an escape from Earth, as I mentioned before. It becomes a site where the planet's precarity is refracted and intensified. The vacuum that surrounds the characters is charged with the residue of human presence like machines, debris, organisms, and fears that refuse disappearance. The Anthropocene is thus not represented as a discrete event, but a structure of relation, in which every attempt at mastery feeds back into new forms of vulnerability. These, again, quote-unquote, gravitational ecologies mark a shift in cinematic thought. They move beyond the spectacle of apocalypse and refuse the fantasy of separation between humanity and its environment, showing instead that the conditions of life and the mechanism of destruction are intertwined. The emotional charge of these narratives translates planetary crisis into affective experience. In doing so, they expand the scope of ecological cinema from representation to recognition to an awareness that to be human in the Anthropocene is to inhabit a fragile system of interdependence that binds the technological, the biological, the cosmic within a single gravitational field. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Trisha. And with Trisha's presentation, all the four papers are now open to questions. So therefore, I would invite questions from the floor. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure there's going to be a cordless mic that might be circulated. Yes? Right. There is a question there. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentations. I had one question for Siddharth. Because now what I've normally seen is, especially from the 1990s, Godzilla has been taken over by Hollywood. So, like, what is your take on that? Any comments on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Hello? Yeah. So as you mentioned that especially in the latter half of the 90s when America started to take over the whole Godzilla, the mythology in the sense, especially Godzilla 98, the Paramount one which Matthew Broderick and all of those, so where it reframed, what's interesting is that it still kept some of the nuclear element in the sense that Godzilla was created from, and this I thought was very interesting in the sense that the 98 Godzilla was specifically created from nuclear test, French Indo-Pacific nuclear testing. But they also restructured Godzilla as more of an animal with animal drives and animal things than a ecological representation. However, I think while this initial stumble happened, because obviously this movie was more geared towards the whole American exceptionalism thing that, look, our fighters and our tanks and stuff will kill Godzilla. What is Japan doing? They can't kill one giant lizard with like a few missiles. But as this narrative shifted, I think especially if you jump to 2014 when Godzilla was re-established in movies, it took on more stronger ecological aspects. The nuclear testing was still there. It was still from Castle Bravo and from Bikini Atoll. But the nuclear testing aspect was still there in the sense that Godzilla is still a nuclear thing, but he also became a force of ecological balance, which is something that the Japanese films have retained, which they have mentioned that it is an ecological force. But the only negative thing I can say about the ecological thing is that Godzilla became a little more benevolent in the American context. It's a little weird when, I love the movie, I love 2014, but it's a little weird when I have to see Godzilla swimming next to battleships and he's not doing anything and they're not doing anything to him. Whereas the whole idea of him being a force of nature and a force of nuclear power in Japan is that he is indiscriminate in what kind of destruction it happens. Your morality is irrelevant to the entire matter of whether you will be a victim of what Godzilla is doing or not. And again, that reflects in how America and Japan have viewed these different aspects. Like, again, America prefers the more exceptionalism, super heroic thing of Godzilla is like a superhero monster, which is what we've seen the last 2-3 years with Godzilla versus Kong, which has become more of a Marvelized superhero-based thing, whereas Japanese Godzilla movies, which released -1 about a couple of years ago, which still went back to that Godzilla is this absolutely almost force of nature, malevolent, almost a malevolent entity. And I think that is what is important when we distinguish between what America sees Godzilla, because it sees it through that superhero, nuclear exceptionalism, cultural exceptional lens, whereas Japan still sees it as a representation of all the horrific aspects of what it entails with the Anthropocene and with nuclear culture and with things. I hope that answered your question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so if there are no further questions, I just have a couple of comments for the others. Siddharth, I had one question for you, but which was basically about the way in which, how do you deal with the way in which Japan has consistently, tried to justify the killing of whales and the way in which they constantly say it's a scientific experiment? And how does that square with Japan's sort of environmental concerns? That is the question that I had for you. But maybe we can, because how are we doing for time? Can someone tell us when this session is supposed to end? So then I'll keep my comments brief. 10 minutes. It's got 10 minutes, okay. Okay, so very quickly then, moving on to Avani, Eileen. Yes, I mean, your points are quite... By the way, when you were showing your PPT, the name of the author was showing up as Hans Raj. So, is it Hans Raj? Yeah. Not Hansda? Hans Raj. I'm sure. Okay, because when I read his book, My Father's Garden, it says Hansda Sovendra Sekhar. So, could you just check? Because, yeah, you could just Google it now, because... I think it's because when he published his book, it was Sovendra Sekhar Hansda, and then when he brought out his next book, it was Hansda Sovendra Sekhar. So not quite sure if it's Hans Raj or not. I think that's something that you might want to look at. So my question would have been to this other book. Are you familiar with My Father's Garden? Yeah. You are. So where would you place that book in your argument? Do you think that it has got any relationship with the way in which you're talking about the Adivasi identity, or would you regard it as something that's completely different? It doesn't have anything to do with the previous one. That would be my question to you. As far as Deepanita is concerned, I've seen that film. And I was extremely disturbed because I was watching it during the lockdown. So that made the viewing even more problematic. I would have perhaps wanted a little bit more critical distance, because you seem to be entirely supporting the film, and I would have wanted a little bit more criticality. So reading against the grain, I think probably would have been better. There is this one film, Trisha, that I was constantly thinking this happened. This came out in 1984, and it created quite a ripple. It's called The Day After, and it. And it was about, the day after nuclear explosion happens and all of that. If you have to draw a kind of a history of these films, would you want to consider The Day After as a part of that history, and how would you situate it? So that is the context that I'm looking for. And do you have that particular visual of Sandra Bullock in the fetal position? I thought was rather extraordinary. So. So would you want to read that image? And if that's, so those are my comments. Thank you. So maybe you could each go. And have you been able to check whether, yes. Right, so maybe the others can go. Start from that. Yeah, so you
Yeah, specifically what you brought up about, especially with the whales and the ecological collapse. So this is a slight anecdote. This is a bit of a diversion from this entire thing. So Japan has this entire concept of yokai spirits in the sense that there is, and Godzilla has when he was designed, especially with the idea that this is an unnatural animal in the sense that it embodied that idea of the yokai spirit. Especially in the first movie, if you've seen the design, which is less of a dinosaur, and because he had pointy ears and almost like this goblin-esque face type thing. So in similar yokai mythology, there is also, I forget what the name is, but there is a yokai spirit which is supposed to embody the spirit of slaughtered whales specifically. There is actually one. I can't recall the name, but it maintains that aspect, and it's somewhat of a reminder in the sense that while there are these crimes that have taken place, because Japan, especially when it comes to yokai and with a lot of its culture post-nuclear things, there is this overwhelming sense of guilt. There is this strange guilt-based culture, which is also some things you can see very important in Godzilla -1. And again in Shin Godzilla, where the idea that government inaction is leading to an more and more escalating phase of how you're dealing with Godzilla. So from an ecological perspective, the one, specifically with the whales, what you mentioned, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, which is a movie that I mentioned, there is one particular scene where Hedorah is the pollution monster. Its effects are basically turning seas into sludge and killing and choking different animals. So there are dolphins and whales which are washing up on the beach with their skeletons and everything missing, which is supposed to be a critique of the fact that we are doing this. Obviously, it does not direct to the thing that the act of hunting or act of humanity, but this is, I felt like the most direct way that they're saying that, yes, we are responsible for this ecological collapse, but we are, and the solution is not necessarily with us, because rarely in these films does humanity ever provide the solution to deal with these monster things, except in the first movie. The first movie, they created a weapon which was just as bad as the weapon that created Godzilla, which led to the creator of the weapon also ending his own life and taking the secrets with him. So again, that ecological course correction which is embodied by Godzilla, which is like completely down the middle, no bias, no anything like that, I think that embodies the idea of setting that ecological stand correct. I hope that sort of.
It's Hansda, I checked, but the copy and the references that I had, because I saw Hansraj and then I kept referring it, so that was a mistake. And how would I place My Father's Garden with respect to Adivasi Will Not Dance? I think My Father's Garden is a little more inspired by his life and his social location and his financial or social economic position that he comes from. It's also, it also speaks to queer experiences.
My question specifically about how would you relate the way in which the Adivasi identity is represented in the Adivasi Shall Not Dance with the way in which the Adivasi is figured in My Father's Garden. So the identity.
I think in terms of identity, in My Father's Garden, it's a more privileged, it's a more educated identity.
Because he's a medical student.
Yeah, he's a medical student. He's a doctor, but also he's sort of participating in the systems. For example, in one of the chapters, he's friends with somebody who sells other people's land and sort of goes away and runs away. So the idea that he sort of broke bread with the enemy against his own people. So that's sort of like exploiter. Yeah, exploiter, exploited, oppressor, oppressed.
Sir, as you had rightly pointed out, this needs to be more power-packed with more of problematization. I think it's like I found it disturbing as well, the entire projection. And over there, the ambush of tigers that we see crowding, and then the human baby being drowned, and then a cub being born. I think I would like to talk about eco-fatality over here, and also maybe over here how, in spite of such a disastrous or adverse situations, how the people are still making an attempt to somehow make the conditions fit for survival. We see they are making boats out of plastic containers and bag, and it's like a cry for surviving amidst all the massacre. And I would also, I think I would be packing it up with blue Anthropocene and also vulnerability studies for that matter. And anything that you would like to briefly on?
A little bit more criticality, that would be nice. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
So first of all, thank you so much for mentioning the movie, because I remember when I was going through my Alien phase, I watched all the movies that was released during that era, 80s and 90s era. The day after, if I'm not too wrong, it was not a very well televised movie. It was not. Yes, yes, it may. So I think, yes, I can actually add that to my paper because it will add a, let's say, third angle. As I'm talking about gravity, it talks about the technological failure created by human beings. Then there's life, it talks about the biological failures. And then I think that will add the planetary, the human created failures within the planetary system. And then, yes, of course, you can actually use that movie. I think I'm going to do that. And when I was thinking about this, and I was kind of moving with the idea of this hyper objects and dark ecology, I was thinking about also the movie called The Martian. I think you have watched it. So we all know the story that Martian talks about a human being stuck on a different planet, and he's trying to create a human environment over there in Mars. So yes, I think that movie would fit, and it will add a third angle, and I will do that. I think I will do that.
Right. So if there are no further questions, can we have a warm round of applause for all the paper presenters? I think all the papers raised fairly pertinent questions and definitely raised concerns that we all need to think about. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, and that's where the session comes to an end.
I now request Niladri sir to give the certificates to the paper presenters. Certificate. First, we have Mr. Siddhartha Sinha. Avni Eileen Purti. Dipanvita Nath. And our very own Trisha ma'am. May I now invite Dean sir to come up on stage and give the chair certificate to Niladri sir. Sir, please. We now move on to technical session 5A, and a parallel session 5B is going in the SNU boardroom. I request the presenters to come on stage and our chair, Mr. Sharnindu Dam. Our presenters for this session is Tanushri Basak, Independent Research Scholar, Obronil Gon, Sanskrit College and University, Rifat Ara Khatun, IIT Kharagpur, and Shurupriyo Chakraborty, Sister Nivedita University. Our session chair for today is Mr. Sharnindu Dam. Sharnindu Dam is the youngest assistant professor and examination coordinator in the Department of English, as well as the program coordinator in the Center for New India Studies, Sister Nivedita University. He is also a doctoral research scholar in West Bengal State University, working on post-millennial Indian dystopian fiction. He is an associate member of the Center for Studies in Gender, Culture and Media, West Bengal State University since 2021. He worked as a research assistant under Dr. Abhijit Paul, University of California, on the issue of environmental and community justice. His area of interests are environment and literature, caste and literature, crisis literature, and vulnerability studies. May I please call on stage Arjita ma'am to felicitate Mr. Dam. Before we start, a quick reminder for all our presenters. Each one of you will be given 8 minutes to present. Over to you, sir.
So we have 3 paper presenters, I guess, in this session. Rifat Ara Khatun, Shurupriyo Chakraborty, and Tanushri Basak, right? Okay. So we will begin with Rifat Ara Khatun. Okay, so you will have 8 minutes at first, and you will be given a reminder, and you will have 2 minutes to conclude. Okay?
Should I start? Very good afternoon to everyone present here. I am Rifat, and my presentation for today, as you can see, is titled Hope, Heed, Hill, our song in present tense, a post-humanist reading of Shudip Sen's Anthropocene, Climate Change, Contagion, and Consolation. Slide change, please. Yes. So I would like to begin with a question. Rather, I would like to borrow a question which Dipesh Chakraborty poses in his essay, Whose Anthropocene a Response? He asks that, faced with the problem of the ecological overreach of humans, what kind of stories do we now tell about ourselves and how? So it is basically where Sudeep Sen's Anthropocene comes into the scene. It is a hybrid, literary or artistic meditation which weaves poetry, prose, as well as, images captured by the writer himself. And it is in response mostly to the pandemic and the current Anthropocene situation. So it is in response to the Anthropocene era, and there has been much deliberation upon this, what the Anthropocene age is. So I'm not going to get into the details of that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read Sudeep Sen's Anthropocene through the angle of critical posthumanism, as well as I would like to deliberate upon the concept of progressive composition of common world as Bruno Latour, proposed, and later on Chakraborty carried forward and elaborated on it. So firstly, what exactly is critical posthumanism, and why do I bring critical posthumanism while reading the Anthropocene? By Anthropocene here, I mean this text by Sudeep Sen, and not, of course, it is in response to the Anthropocene age, but when I'm referring to Anthropocene, I mean this particular text. So, of course, there's a gap in literature, and as artistic meditations, often poetry is ignored from mainstream academia. It is not much talked about, but poetry, art, this, it comes in times of crisis. We see the role of these imaginative works. And in fact, Chakraborty, while answering this particular question, he himself emphasizes on the role of arts and imaginative work in crisis. So anyway, moving back to critical posthumanism, it is one of the schools of thought of the broad idea of posthumanism, which houses other schools of thoughts like transhumanism, then you have philosophical posthumanism and others, right? So critical posthumanism in particular, it is more rigorous and philosophical undertaking and is concerned with what one might term the ongoing deconstruction of humanism and its premises, namely humanism's anthropocentrism, essentialism, exceptionalism, and speciesism. Critical posthumanism and its various denominations and spin-offs are informed by post-anthropocentric ethics, politics, and ecology, and look toward complex notions of embodiment and of material entanglement between humans and a more than human world. And in this process, critical posthumanism asks a number of questions. For instance, how do we come to think of ourselves as human? Or what exactly does it mean to be human in the age of Anthropocene? Also, other questions like, what are its implications for the future relationships and the interdependence with non-human others? Example, the environment, non-human animals, machines, or technology, but also any other forms of spiritualism. And the critical posthumanism particularly has particular few tenets. It is not solely the technological part, which is the popular posthumanism, but also it includes it investigates the current forms of our anthropocentric desires, the yearning for the inhuman, the other, or for self-transformation. This desire articulates itself on the one hand in the form of an anticipated transcendence of the human condition, often imagined in various scenarios of disembodiment and metamorphosis. So this desire and ecological crisis which critical posthumanism investigates, this find place in Sudeep Sen's Anthropocene. For instance, in the poem titled Disembodiment, which he dedicates to Amitabh Ghosh, so there's a particular line which specifically mentions this desire or the anthropocentric greed, which has resulted into, large-scale planetary crisis. So he writes that where radiation germinates from human follies, where contamination persists from mistrust, where everything is desire. And now again in another poem, Global Warming, he refers to global warming as a man-made havoc. So all these things signal the anthropocentric greed, which is behind the, tumultuous condition or the crisis we are going through. And post-humanism sets its inquiry into this, and it also ushers a hope for a post-humanistic world where it is anti-speciesist, anti-casteist, there are no hierarchies, where everything, every object, whether living or non-living, has an agency. So yeah, it's basically that. And now also another aspect of critical post-humanism is it takes into account marginalization as well. Before that, just a short explanation on it. So climate change specifically, for behind climate change, a minority of humans have been directly responsible. And this minority of people are mainly wealthy Western nations, largely governed by socially privileged male whites or man and their extraction practices. And the effects of environmental destruction and degradation are disproportionately felt by already marginalized groups who are at the crossroads of this global threat. And how the impact of the climate change and other planetary crises, the first-hand victims as mostly the marginalized people, is seen through another poem titled Love in the Time of Corona, where Sen speaks of the plight of migrant workers, laborers, and says that in thousands, migrant workers march home. Hungry footsteps on empty highways accentuate an irony, social distancing, a privilege only powerful could afford. So I'm not going to pick up other poems just as a reference because of want of time. I'm not referring to other poems. So these are the issues which Sen deals with in his book. The other aspect which I wanted to bring into light is the progressive composition of common world. Now, what exactly is this? So, Dipesh Chakraborty and Bruno Latour remind us that the challenge of the Anthropocene is not simply to understand a changing planet, but to compose a common world. By this, they mean that the human-non-human divide no longer holds. Climate change shows that the art itself participates in our shared history. For Latour, this progressive composition of a common world is an ongoing process, never finished, through which we continually negotiate coexistence among all beings, human and otherwise. So Chakraborty extends this by emphasizing that the struggle against climate change is also a struggle of imagination. Please change the slide. To envision the planet is not a backdrop to human activity, but as a living plural presence that includes us. So, the effect of the climate change or other man-made havocs, the victims are as well as the nature and other animals inhabiting the world, and also the marginalized group of people. So amidst these crises in Anthropocene, we must share their story also, their plight also. And so Sen brings up the issues of animals in one of his poems titled Today, and it's basically an aftermath of the ongoing, unprecedented rains which we are having due to the climate change. So the dogs are coiled around each other, birds' feathers puffed up for warmth, squirrels grove back into hiding. As we stare starkly at the climate change we have helped create.
Please conclude. Huh?
Yeah.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, it's okay. These are the two aspects which I wanted to bring: critical posthumanism and the composition of common world. And also, Sen does not only present a grim reality, but as it is the essence of art, he also ushers in hope. He brings in hope, and at the same time, the role of the artist is not to look away. So, bringing poetry, prose, and images or visual art in times of darkness, no matter where or where we are, there is always light. So this is the essence of this book, and I wanted to just bring it into discussions. Thank you.
Thank you for your paper. So we will take the questions at the end of the discussion. So next we have Shuropriyo Chakraborty, Mr. Shuropriyo Chakraborty. Okay, so you have 8 minutes.
Okay, I'm ready. No worries. Since I don't have a PPT, I'll just be reading my paper. My paper is titled Forest, Field and Frontier, Landscape Transformation and Post-Human Subjectivities in Mukundaram Chakraborty's Chondi Mongol. Now, from this Mongol Kabbo, I have taken the first section of the Chondi Mongol, that is the Akhetic Khondo. And this translation is it is translated into English by Edward M. Yajizian. The Akhetic Khondo of the medieval Chondi Mongol Kabbo, it is roughly around the 16th century of the current era, reflects some remarkably prescient narrative about human-induced ecological transformation and the complex negotiations between divine authority, human ambition, and the environmental change. The episode centers on Kalketu, a forest-dwelling hunter who receives the divine command from goddess Chondi to clear the primeval forest and establish a city, thereby transforming wilderness into civilization. The narrative arc from forest to city, from nature to culture, encapsulates the fundamental Anthropocene dynamic of humans as a geological agents reshaping terrestrial ecosystems. As Richard Grove argues in his 1995 work, Green Imperialism, colonial and pre-colonial South Asian texts often reveal an indigenous tradition of environmental awareness that predates Western ecological consciousness. Chondi Mongol, composed during a period of significant agricultural expansion and forest clearance in medieval Bengal between the 15th and 16th centuries, unconsciously documents the anxieties and justifications of accompanying large-scale environmental modification. The divine sanction that Chondi provides for Kalketu's deforestation becomes a theological legitimization for anthropogenic landscape transformation, suggesting that the medieval Bengali imagination required supernatural authorization to undertake what would today be recognized as dramatic ecological disruption. Tony Ballantyne and Antoinette Berton, in their 2014 edited volume, Bodies in Contact, observe that indigenous narratives or landscape transformation frequently embed environmental change within cosmological frameworks that acknowledge both human agency and divine will. This dual acknowledgement distinguishes pre-modern South Asian environment consciousness from the secular utilitarian frameworks that would later characterize colonial resource extraction. The Akhetic Khondo's portrayal of the forest clearance operates within a complex symbolic economy that merits Anthropocene scrutiny. The forest in this narrative is simultaneously a space of divine presence, economic potential, and civilizational absence. Kalketu's transformation from hunter to king through forest destruction reflects the period's agrarian expansion. When Bengal's deltaic ecology was being systematically converted from forested wetlands to rice-cultivating plains, Kumkum Chatterjee, in her work, The Cultures of History in Early Modern India, mentions that medieval Bengali texts register the profound transformations in landscape and livelihood patterns during this period of agricultural intensification. The forest clearance described in the Akhetic Khondo was not merely mythological fancy, but reflected actual historical processes of agricultural colonization occurring across Bengal Delta during the Mughal period. The goddess Chondi herself embodies this paradox. She dwells in the forest, yet commands its destruction. suggesting an indigenous understanding that divinity could sanction ecological change while remaining immanent with nature. This differs markedly from later colonial narratives that positioned nature and culture in binary opposition. Rachel McDermott observes in Singing to the Goddess, poems to Kali and Uma from Bengal, that Mongol Kavya texts demonstrate the impenetration of human and divine agency in reshaping Bengali landscape. The text insistence on divine agency in landscape transformation can be read as an early recognition that human alternations of the environment carried consequences requiring supernatural justification. A proto-ecological consciousness that understood deforestation not merely as economic activity, but as cosmologically significant action requiring divine mandate and ritualized acknowledgement. The theological dimensions of environmental transformation in the Akhetic Khondo of Chondi Mongol merit deeper analysis within Anthropocene discourse. The goddess Chondi's role as both forest deity and agent of deforestation suggests a sophisticated understanding of the paradoxes inherent in the human-nature relations. Unlike the Abrahamic traditions that often positioned humans as having dominion over nature, or romantic traditions that idealize pristine wilderness, the Chondi Mongol presents a more ambivalent version where the ecological transformation is simultaneously necessary, divinely ordained, and potentially dangerous. David Curley, in his article Kalika's Marketplaces, mentions that Bengali Mongol Kavyas encode anxieties about commercialization and urbanization through narratives of divine intervention in a human economic activities. The requirement for divine sanction before undertaking deforestation can be interpreted as religious cultural mechanism for restraining unbridled environmental exploitation, a pre-modern version of what we might today call environmental impact assessment. The Akhetic Khondo also illuminates questions of environmental justice and the social distribution of ecological transformation's benefits and burdens. Kalketu begins as a marginal figure, a low-caste hunter occupying liminal forest space who becomes a king through his willingness to execute environmental change. This narrative suggests that ecological transformation in medieval Bengal involved not just physical landscape altercation, but also reorganization and the redistribution of power. Ranajit Guho's work, Elementary Aspects of Peasant Insurgency in Colonial India, reminds us that the appropriation of forest resources and the conversion to agricultural use was always a contested process involving multiple social actors. I'll be concluding. The text's subsequent episodes which detail conflicts between Kalketu's new kingdom and established powers that can be interpreted as territorial disputes arising from ecological modification, struggles over newly created agricultural land, trade routes, and urban centers. The Chondi Mongol largely provides a medieval Bengali meditation on what we now term land use change, recognizing that environmental transformation inevitably generates the social conflict, economic reorganization, and political realignment. The text suggests that societies have long grappled with the ethical, spiritual, and social dimensions of landscape transformation, and that pre-modern traditions may offer valuable resources for contemporary environmental thought, resources that acknowledge human agency in environmental change while insisting on accountability, ritual restraint, and ongoing spiritual negotiation with more than human world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty. Next, I would... So next I would like to call Tanushri Boshak. Okay, so you have 8 minutes. Okay.
How can I change this?
Is it working? He will change it. Just ask him. He will change it. Yes, fine. You must start it. Yeah.
Very good afternoon to everyone here. My paper is titled Decolonizing the Anthropocene, Indigenous Storytelling, Ecofeminism, and Perspectives of Resistance in Angeline Boole's broader literary project. In my paper, we can move to the next slide. In my paper, I'm discussing how Angeline Boole's works, Firekeeper's Daughter and Warrior Girl Unearthed, intervene in Anthropocene discourse by foregrounding Anishinaabe relational ethics and indigenous ecological futures. We can move to the next slide. Angeline Boole's acclaimed debut, Firekeeper's Daughter, published in 2021, along with its powerful follow-up, Warrior Girl Unearthed, published in 2023, collectively articulate a dialogic exploration of indigenous identity, historical injustice, and cultural survivance, which is a term that Gerald Weisener deploys to talk about a resilient identity that refuses to succumb to the colonial grammar surrounding victimhood. While the first novel centers Fontaine's negotiations with systemic violence, environmental degradation, and the epistemic disruptions caused by law enforcement into the Ojibwe community and its individuals, Boole's second novel radicalizes this critique through Perry Firekeeper Birch's direct encounters with the institutions at the center of the settler colonial enterprise over the repatriation of indigenous ancestral remains. The central idea that I seek to explore is that Boole's storytelling reorients the Anthropocene away from universalized narratives of crisis, collapse, and towards frameworks of survivance, care, and decolonial ecological responsibility. We can move to the next one. The Anthropocene is commonly defined as the epoch in which human activity has become a geological force. However, scholars like Donna Haraway, Kyle Powers-White, and Jason Moore warn that this framing leads to homogenizing responsibility. Kyle Powers-White argues, for indigenous communities, climate change is not something new, but it is instead a continuation of colonial dispossession and resource extraction. It is experienced as a continuation of the same colonial processes like land seizure, extractive industry, forced displacement, and cultural erasure, and this has been ongoing since first contact. The implications of settler colonialism and nation-state policies towards indigenous peoples are complex and intricately woven into structural and institutional frameworks. Warrior Girl Unearthed talks about the policies that have been instituted by the colonial laws to erase and dispossess native people from their land and their rich history. The systems of boarding schools that were established to, within quotes, educate, unquote, the Native American children. This discussion on Anthropocene is in order to discuss colonial histories and ongoing structures of power. We can move to the next one. Indigenous environmental humanities foregrounds relationality and their established relationship with land, water, animals, their ancestors, and humans as part of a shared community and an integral component of their ongoing life. Utilizing the frame of ecofeminism helps to understand how the extraction of land and the exploitation of women emerged from the same colonial forces. Furthermore, environmental crisis cannot be addressed without addressing gendered, cultural, and political violence. Boole's writings and her key ideas, read through these lenses, offer a new framework to look at this idea and the problematic surrounding them. We can move to the next one. Angeline Boole, the author, is an enrolled member of Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians in North America. Her writings and advocacy are deeply rooted in Anishinaabe cultural teachings, language, and relationships to land and water. Importantly, the protagonists in both her novels are young Indigenous women who inherit and reconcile with traditions of care, storytelling, and responsibility within their communities. Thus, her works mark a sharp departure from dystopian Anthropocene narratives. We can move to the next one. Here are some of the key ideas that I'm looking at. Firstly, when it comes to land and water relations, in indigenous communities, water is not merely a resource. It is alive, storied, and embedded in ceremony. Buli represents these practices not as relics of the past, something to be romanticized, but as a way of life for her native characters. This choice challenges anthropocentric assumptions and reframes ecological care as relational responsibility. The second idea that I look at is the violence against land and violence against women. Both of her novels illuminate how violence against land and violence against women, indigenous women, are interconnected. The trafficking of women and girls in the novel is shown alongside trafficking of native artifacts and remains. This alongside environmental exploitation are not metaphorically linked, they are structurally linked. The author therefore exposes that environmental catastrophe is not an abstract planetary condition, but a lived, gendered, and historical reality. The third idea I'm looking at is youth as agents of cultural reclamation. Both the novels have protagonists who do not succumb to despair. Instead, they enact forms of resistance grounded in community, knowledge transmission, and care. This directly is a counter to the dystopian tone that is found in much of climate fiction. In her contribution to Anthropocene literature, the author emphasizes resistance, sovereignty, and futurity. The story culminates in a forward-looking, hopeful trajectory, announcing the birth of Donis's daughter, a new warrior girl, as an act of passing on the seed, and the role of reconciling the historical injustices and erasure, and building a better, more secure future for the tribe and for the community. Perry, the protagonist, cares deeply about her community and finds her calling, and she strives to work to repatriate the remains of warrior girl, one of her ancestors, back to her tribe. Towards the end, we see the tribe gathered together for a healing ceremony in which they return the ancestors back to earth, their rightful resting place. Perry commits to advancing her advocacy, lending rhetorical and moral weight to a struggle she regards with deep-seated dedication. Buli insists that environmental crisis must be understood through histories of settler colonialism and ongoing struggles for land and cultural survival. She refuses the idea that the Anthropocene is a shared human fate. Instead of this framing of Anthropocene as the end of the world, Buli reframes it as a call to recenter ethical rationality with the more than human world. It is not a sign of resignation, it is a sign of return and remembering. We can move to the next one. And to conclude, Buli's storytelling functions as a decolonial intervention in contemporary climatic discourse. Her novels illuminate the correlation between ecological degradation and indigenous dispossession, while also imagining futures grounded in relational care and sovereignty. Through these novels, we are offered a profound view of the traumatic past encapsulating crime, loss, and collective expression of cultural sovereignty, cultural memory, land rights, and historical events that shape the present state of things. In reframing the Anthropocene this way, Buli expands climate literature beyond catastrophe and towards responsibility, repair, and community-based movement, one that is rooted in healing and spiritual knowledge of the people. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Obronil gone with us. It's gone? Yes, sir. Obronil gone. Yeah, so Obronil gone with us. So you are next. Okay, so you can simply. Yeah, so you have 8 minutes. Okay. So Obronil Gon is a UG student from Sanskrit College and University, Kolkata, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
A very good afternoon to all my professors, respected professors, and to the panel audiences who are present here. So today, my research topic, I have actually taken a movie actually a Japanese Ghibli movie by Isao Takahata titled Grave of the Fireflies, and through it I want to demonstrate how Anthropocene is not only limited to the geological epoch that we ourselves know, but it extends beyond the boundary of moral climate. And so I'm about to prove how through my research that how Anthropocene also causes a moral climate change that personally I have noticed after the COVID pandemic time. So let's just begin. So Anthropocene marks a certain period that the human ability is respond to someone else's suffering, becoming isolated from its very origin. Isao Takahata's Grave of Fireflies, that was released in 1988, portrays this isolation into an ethical visual artwork. So the catastrophe that has been shown in the film, let's just consider the very beginning scene of the cinema. That is, Seita was almost at a very critical condition and he's almost about to die. So he remembers his desire actually, with his sister playing around an empty ground, which is again illuminated with fireflies. So the unnoticed death of children at a railway station proves how the Pacific War, in which it is based on, Japan has already accepted deaths of children, not showing a bare minimum concern for those victims who are already in a life-threatening condition. But they could have been saved. These children too are being considered dead by anyone who passes by the body. The opening scene offers the very first glimpse of Anthropocene psyche, where life still continues amidst fatalities. Social order is seen stamping over empathy. Then, besides carrying the significance of maintaining natural beauty, Takahata's fireflies also symbolize a world that has forgotten to speak which is right or which is wrong. So this is my very first slide. Here I have described that the act of suppression has extended its interdisciplinary boundaries, crossing the limits of a complete screenplay. So I have taken 4 literary works from each regional literature. So first I begin with Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, then Virginia Woolf's The Death of the Moth, Catherine Mansfield's The Fly, and J.M. Coetzee's The Lives of the Animals, from a dispersed yet a coherent discourse. In Kafka's novel Metamorphosis, he characterizes Gregor Samsa's character in such a way which is believed to dramatize horror at the very beginning, but later his actual aim was to demonstrate what social indifference has transformed him into. That is, he imagined that indifference as a vermin, as something as something disfigured. Then in Mansfield's story, Mansfield's short story, The Fly, we can see how the boss, who is one of the central protagonists, toys with the dying fly, which, in order to escape his haunting memories, that is his son's death during the First World War, he uses torturing the fly as an activity that will keep him distracted. And in Virginia Woolf's moth fluttering against the invisible wall between vitality and the death embodies how existential desires might turn into something fragile when the grandeur of life is forced out. Similarly, Coates's Elizabeth Costello, the main character obviously, desperately pleads for empathy that does not require justification or proof in front of academic audiences. In each one of these narratives, we can see the two collapses. We can see two collapses actually. The first collapse is obviously the collapse of human voice, and the second collapse is the collapse of human empathy, which again accompanies each other as if they are interdependent. Each of these texts, just like The Grave of Fireflies portrays the gradual withdrawal of speech itself, they anticipate the unexplored part of Anthropocene, where meaning disintegrates into data and the suffering body.
You have 2 minutes, okay? 2 minutes to conclude. You can talk about your conclusion, like what conclusion you have drawn from all the analysis, okay? Yeah.
Okay, sir. So the thing that I wanted to prove actually in this spectrum of insidious violence covering species to children and also from the ecology to economy, literature, philosophy, psychology and cinema will always intersect to one another. Kafka provides existential condition, Mansfield and Woolf gives the emotional texture, Coetzee allows for the ethical articulation, Foucault and Marx install the structural diagnosis. Then in the very concluding frame of The Grave of Fireflies, where we can see Seta and Setsuko belonging to a spectral serenity of an empty ground which is illuminated by fireflies before a city that contains the entire paradox of Anthropocene. To interpret that particular scene is to confront one's own implication in it. The extinction of the fireflies act as a metaphor for the gradual eradication of human empathy is shown to have been accepted as an aesthetic. Hence my title of the paper, Fire Yet No Fireflies, finds its fulfillment in this unprotested burning world which was promised of its deserved light. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhorind.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so thanks to all the paper presenters. Now the panel is open to questions. So if any audience member have any question to ask. Yes, so there is a question.
Yeah, my question was particularly for the second presenter. So you were talking about Chondimongol and this whole idea that there needs to be a divine sanction for deforestation to happen, and how it helps to, in a way, stop rampant deforestation or environmental harm. But don't you think there also lies, kind of a binary between nature and culture, and in a way, because of course these Mongol Kabbo or any other creations of literature or oral literature, whatever it is, they're created by humans. So don't you think this was actually a ploy or a technique to gather the sanction of the divine identity or the divine deity?
That is exactly what I was talking about. I was not talking about the divine sanctifying actually the deforestation of the land. It was done by the human beings. Yeah. It was projected by the human beings that it is ordained by God to actually deforest the area and actually establish cities. Okay. So I'm not justifying the deforestation of the land.
Yeah. So that is what I was thinking. So it's in a way trying to get a affirmation from the divine identity, so that it permits the deforestation and so on and so forth.
It's the human beings who make it seem like that way.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question? Any other question from the floor? Okay, so thank you very much. I have some observations based on all the papers. I think one of the common themes that I could find in all the papers is extremely important. That in the context of Anthropocene and in the context of posthumanism, it is extremely important for us to look at this concept not from the perspective of global north, but from the perspective of global south, that I think all the 4 papers have done, because it's not about environmentalism anymore, it's about environmental justice, and that Patrataji has rightly claimed that environmental justice is the environmentalism of the poor. So I think that thing was there in your paper, and how posthumanism cannot be talked about if we don't talk about indigeneity and the marginalization that were there in your discussions, because the people who are already in the margins, they need to be put in the center first. And instead of doing that, we cannot simply just saying that, okay, we are going to decentralize the system and it's now going to be post-human and human centralization or the anthropocentric view is not needed anymore. So all these papers have focused largely on these aspects, and I think O'Brien deserves a cheer from all of us, because he is simply an undergraduate student, and Anthropocene is such a heavy topic that all research scholars, even professors, usually think twice before dealing with such a topic, and he has dared to talk about that. So that's a great thing, I think, you have done. So I have very short questions for all of you, if you can answer very brief, because we have paucity of time, but I would like to ask. So I would like to begin with Mr. Chakraborty. You have talked, if I'm not wrong, you have talked about post-human subjectivities in your title. So how do you, kind of blend this idea of post-human subjectivity with the idea of theological self and the interpretation of Ma Chondi and goddess? So that how do you kind of merge these two parallel lines?
Actually, in the text, if you go through the lines of the text, it is a poem. It's a long poem. Over there, the post-human subjectivity is situated in a place where Mukundaram portrays the divine goddess Chondi. She's actually imparting her knowledge upon Kalketu, and Kalketu is actually a hunter. Okay, he is actually completely rampantly hunting around the forest, and Chondi is actually in sanctification of her own divinity. Okay, she is searching for the legitimization of her own worship in the real world, in the human world, and she actually makes all the animals disappear from the forest magically. Okay, so not disappear, but hide from Kalketu so that he cannot hunt them. And she herself disguises as a golden monitor lizard. Okay, and actually comes in front of him, and he actually tries to hunt that monitor lizard, and then he gets a divine intervention where Ma Chondi actually tells him that you can actually deforest this area, you can actually excavate this land and establish a city, you will be a king, etc., etc. So this is how it functions over here. Thank you.
I think it was extremely well researched. You have mentioned a lot of critics. I think one thing you can see and you can work on is Timothy Morton's idea of agrologistics.
Absolutely.
Because agrologistics talks about it in dark ecology.
When it will be published,
yeah, so you can look into that, because it exactly talks about that only, that how agriculture kind of tamed nature and all that.
Exactly.
So you may look into that. Thank you very much. Next we have Miss Khatun. I have a question regarding the text that you have chosen. It's Shudip Sen's Anthropocene. And you have mentioned that this text is a kind of accumulation of poetry, prose, and as well as visual images. So how do you look at it? Do you think this is a kind of narrative, this narrative strategy? Is it something that Shudip Sen has done voluntarily to prove any point of Anthropocene, the text that he's talking about? So how do you look into it?
I'm not exactly sure about the author's perspective on it, but from my point of view, the kind of hybrid life we are living in, it sort of encapsulates that, and like bringing in poetry, prose, and images. So this act itself is, I believe, a post-humanist act. So to give us a better picture of the Anthropocene times. And basically, it is, I think even other authors are also experimenting these things and bringing hybrid genres to reflect upon the planetary crisis or the Anthropocene. So yes, it gives a better perspective, I believe. And anything else that you want to ask, or did I miss anything?
No, okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Khatun. Next we have Ms. Tanushri Boshak. The main question that I will have for you is, like when you are talking about the texts, climate fiction and dystopia, post-apocalyptic and all that, and of course I know that you know about Great Derangement and Amitabh Ghosh's, the main contestant, that the idea that he gives us that so climate fiction is not any more fiction anymore, or dystopias are no more an imaginary tomorrow. It's happening tomorrow. It's happening today, now, present only. So do you think that decolonizing the Anthropocene that you are talking about, or looking at it from the perspective of Global South, help us in looking at that for Global North, what is climate fiction, something that is fictional or something that is dystopian that may happen in future, is the ground reality of the indigenous people of Global South. So what's your take on that?
I would say for a lot of the indigenous people, and in my paper I also talk about indigenous feminisms and how it is separated from the conventional idea of feminism, and how it is also rooted in environmental activism. So for a lot of the indigenous communities, living in sync with the environment is a way of life. So in terms of policy making, in terms of environmental policies, they do deserve a seat at the table. And when it comes to environmental justice and keystone pipelines, all these projects that are happening in North America and Canada, in those areas, a lot of indigenous people, especially women, are at the forefront of the movement. As we've also seen in India, when it comes to environmental justice movements, women have been at the forefront of it. So I think that's a pertinent question to ask. And also a pertinent question to ask is, why do these women not get a space or a seat at the table in order to voice their concerns when they have been doing the work forever? So I think.
So an intersectional approach can also be taken, like when we are looking into this. Thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and lastly we have Mr. Obronil Gon. So I think it's not a question, like direct question. I think it will be a suggestion, like from my end, that I think you have taken a lot of texts. Mm-hmm. And I think that has, because in a presentation you have like 8 to 10 minutes to actually present. So, and of course you are doing it for the first time.
Actually, this is my first experience.
Yeah, so that's I can understand. So it's a like kudos to you. So I think what you need to do is you need to like shrink it a bit, because you are talking about Grave of the Fireflies, and then you have taken other text at the same time. So focus, I think, on 1 or 2 texts. You can definitely use parallels. But I think one thing that I was reading your abstract there you have talked about the consciousness of the fireflies, that how the fireflies testimony is being presented in that film. I think something on that line. So would you like to talk in brief about that? Like, what do you mean by that? How firefly, that we do not usually look at, seem that okay, this firefly can have consciousness. So firefly's testimony, the term that you have used. So how do you look at it in brief?
So basically, fireflies, they do not know what's going in the outer world, the human world. They just know they have to hover around at night, glow. And then again, as soon as they have to go to their habitats, they have to it's basically they're disappearing due to the
So you need to look at the consciousness aspect, like how the in
sorry, sir.
posthumanism, no, it's nothing to be sorry about. So in the context of posthumanism, how different scholars have looked into non-human subjectivity, whether that have subjectivity or not, or what kind of subjectivity, the consciousness of the non-human object. So you just need to look into that. Okay, so thank you very much. So with that, we close this session. A big round of applause for all these paper presenters. Thank you.
I now request Swarnendu sir to give away the certificates to the paper presenters. First, we have Tanushri Basak, Independent Research Scholar. Miss Obronil Gon. Mr. Obronil Gon, I'm very sorry. Rifat Ara Khatun. And Mr. Shurupriya Chakraborty. May I now invite Dean sir to come up on stage and give the chair certificate to Swarnendu sir. I now request Roop sir to take over.
May I request Swarnendu to come up on stage for a group picture and all the other presenters. So with this, we have now come to the conclusion of our all the academic sessions for the day and for this conference. Before we proceed further, I think is it okay now? Now, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Probal Rai Chaudhuri, sir, to come up on stage and deliver the valedictory address.
Well, this is going to be a very difficult task for me. This is not my forte, neither my cup of tea, but I'll try to create some impression. Well, we are at the conclusion of the International Conference on Citing Anthropocene, Culture, Politics and Literature. And as our Honorable Vice Chancellor has pointed out at the outset, science too. So distinguished delegates, esteemed speakers, dear colleagues and my very dear students, as we draw this remarkable conference to a close, let us pause to reflect on the rich dialogues we have shared over here on these 2 days. I guess together we have explored the Anthropocene not merely as a scientific epoch, but as a profound cultural and ethical conditioning, one that challenges our ways of seeing, narrating, and inhabiting the world. The insights that were offered here across literature, politics, and cultural thought have illuminated us and shown how the human and the planetary are inseparably intertwined. Our discussions have urged us to move beyond boundaries of the discipline and geography, to imagine new solidarities and new responsibilities towards the fragile ecologies we all inhabit. Let us all carry forward this spirit of inquiry, not just in the academic domain, but also in the collaborative manner with humanity and ecology, so that the conversations that were kindled here may continue to inspire scholarship, activism, and creativity. On behalf of the organizing committee, I extend heartfelt gratitude to every participant, paper presenter, and listener who has contributed to the success of this gathering. May we part not with closure, but with renewed commitment to reimagining our shared futures in the Anthropocene. Thank you, and safe journeys ahead.
At the Department of English, we believe that every ending is the beginning of something new. So here we are with 2 new endeavors, and I'm trying to... Okay. This is a multidisciplinary peer-reviewed journal of humanities that the department proposes to release in January 2026. And we are already starting with the preparations. Go to the previous one. Yeah, so this is an initiative by the research scholars, the full-time research scholars of the department. I would like to invite Trisha Das and Roop Bishash, the editors of the first volume. So if your articles have missing articles in them, please get in touch with these people. So they are the editors of the first volume. This is going to be a non-predatory journal, and a journal where we would like to bring up good unpublished papers, and we will try to keep quality. We will have an editorial board, and all the announcements and formal declarations will be made soon. So congratulations. Way to go. Now leave the stage kindly. স্টেজে তুললে নামছে না। So the second one is of course the legacy of Department of English. Salam Shakespeare 5.0, the 5th International Conference on Shakespeare. This time we will have it for 3 days, 23rd, 24th and 25th of April 2026. May I now call upon stage the 3 conveners, Ms. Shudesha Das, Ms. Devdatta Mitro and Mr. Shornendu Dam. I think Shornendu had left early, so it's okay, no problem. In absentia, we'll cheer for him. And yeah, very visible. Okay, so on that note, abar tomrao namo. Stage e utle ke unamchen. So on that note, I'll leave the stage now because I'm trying to get everybody down. Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you my professors and thank you colleagues. Thank you students. A huge round of applause from my end to you all. Cheers.
Now we are going to move to the most interesting part of the program, and I think it is still live, so behave yourselves. So the certificate distribution begins. Now I would like to call upon stage Professor Dr. Probal Rai Chaudhuri sir to kindly distribute the certificates to our volunteers. Sonakshi De. সন্মিত্র ঘোষ। ইশিকা ভট্টাচার্য। संजना घोष। सायदा অদ্রিজা সাহা। জয়িতা ঘোষ। রীতা শ। মহিমা দত্ত। চয়ন ব্যানার্জি। প্রণীত। অর্ক, অর্পণ বোস, সৃঞ্জয়, অভিষেক, রিঙ্কু, অর্ণব বিশ্বাস, রাজদীপ তালধি, দেবকন্যা রায়, আছে জেসমিন, হিনা আফরিন, জেসমিন খানম, হিনা আফরিন, ঐন্দ্রিলা সিংহ, অনিন্দিতা চক্রবর্তী, Now I would like to call upon stage Professor Dr. Topu Bishwas sir to come up on stage and deliver some of the certificates. সৌম্যদীপ্ত দাস, রাজশ্রী দাস, অভিক দাস, অভিক দেব, সরি, शेक्सपियर बोले थे ना नाम में क्या रखा है, उन्हीं इंग्लिश से बोले चिलन बाय द वे। तृष्णा, সম্পূর্ণা মণ্ডল, দিয়া বিশ্বাস, জোয়া জাভেদ, নন্দিতা প্রামাণিক, কৌশিকী দাস, অলিভিয়া পাল, বন্দনা মাইতি, কোয়েল কর, রূপসা, শ্রদ্ধা, অর্চিস্মিতা, and Sneha. Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to call upon stage Professor Dr. Niladri R. Chatterjee, sir, to come on stage to distribute the certificates for the organizing committee. First, Dr. Monikinkini Basu. Professor Dr. Probal Rai Chaudhuri, sir. Paramita Raut Rai. সুদীপ্ত সাহা। স্বর্ণেন্দু দাম। দেবদত্তা মিত্র। সুদেশা দাস। ট্রু ট্রু ট্রু। সুরপ্রিয় চক্রবর্তী। Richa Gupta. Ishita Banerjee. Soumita Chakraborty.
দাদা এখনো অনেকে আছে।
Ankita Kumari.
Okay.
Shoaib Akhtar Molla. Two volunteers were left, I think. Ishita Bonik, please come up on stage. Are you here? Yes, she is here. Can we have a big round of applause? And Nikita Mondol. Now once again to the organizing committee, Trisha Dash. আমি আর কলেজ স্ট্রিট যেতে চাইছি না এই মাসে, প্লিজ। Okay, now, of course, me.
Okay. Taste it.
Okay, now I would like to call upon stage the two conveners, Dr. Priyanka Chakraborty and Dr. Orchita Banerjee, to deliver the official vote of thanks.
We feel delighted to present this vote of thanks on behalf of the Department of English, Sister Nivedita University. I hope I'm audible. Thank you. Firstly, we would like to thank our Honorable Chancellor Sir, Shri Shottam Roy Chaudhary, for being a constant support and encouragement in all our endeavors. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to our Honorable VC Sir, Professor Dr. Shanku Bose, who graced this occasion by taking out time from his busy schedule and enriched us with his presidential address. We also thank our Pro-Chancellor, Professor Dr. Dhrubajyoti Chattopadhyay, and Professor Shuman Chatterjee Sir, Group CEO, Techno India, for forever encouraging us to dream big and achieve bigger. We extend our gratitude to Shumanto Basu Sir, Registrar SNU, for his support and encouragement. We express our sincere gratitude to all the guests who accepted our invitation to join physically as well as virtually. Your scholarship and informative discussions benefited us and played the key role in making the event successful. We hope to welcome you again and have many more such collaborative events for the betterment of our department. We sincerely thank our Dean Sir, Professor Dr. Shubidhar, who in spite of his health condition supported us and stayed with us throughout these 2 days. Thank you so much, sir. A big shout out to our very loving head of the department, Dr. Monikinkini Basu. By the way, let me tell you that Anthropocene was her brainchild.
Just to add one more shout out, the posters, the idea, the back design, everything has been done by her. We are just filling in, so it is she who has done everything. Okay, so it's my turn to present the rest of the vote of thanks. We have already given one shout out for Dr. Basu. We can have one more before we proceed. Okay, we also express our kind acknowledgement to all the faculty members and research scholars whose hard work and relentless efforts made this event possible. Without them, it would have not been possible for us to do anything. I also express my kind acknowledgement and appreciation to all the technical staffs and non-teaching staff members for helping us from behind the curtain and making this event plausible. Finally, and most importantly, students who are our greatest strength and assets, I honestly thank you, students. So I honestly thank them for their wholehearted participation and for enthusiastically making the event successful. I thank all of you once again